Welcome to Keiser Voices, the story of success, brought to you by Keiser University Graduate School, here where the academic world meets personal triumph. Join us today as we dive into the captivating tales of success.
I am Dr. Karen Steverson. I am the campus president of Keiser University in Lakeland, Florida. And I'm very excited to be talking today about a subject that is near and dear to my heart, which is emotional intelligence. And some people call it, in our terms of acronyms and abbreviations, it's EI or EQ for emotional quotient. And, emotional intelligence has been around for a little bit of time, but it's the ability to perceive, to interpret emotions, to show control, to evaluate emotions, and to demonstrate emotions that are very important, especially in leadership. And we want to be able to use emotions to communicate and relate to others in a very effective and constructive manner. The ability to express is also very necessary and essential because, first of all, people are just different. People are not created the same. Every person's different. And it's funny because I've learned through my different stages of leadership that I change. And so as I change, I know other people change as well. So sometimes the role will change people. And so we have to be constantly upgrading and updating how we communicate with one another, especially as the leader. And the emotions play such a big part. So we want to use those emotions to effectively lead others and lead ourselves. It's also the ability to understand, interpret, and then respond. I have found a lot of times as a campus president that it's the responses that I probably have to control more so than anything. For instance, I deal with students, I deal with faculty, I deal with staff. We have a level of managers that are here and then a second level of managers. But I'm also dealing with people that are higher in rank than I am, dealing with my managers, dealing with my supervisors and my dotted lines to the chancellor's office. So we're constantly balancing, managing people that are reporting to us, managing students that we're taking care of and that we're serving, but we're also helping to manage situations that rise above our pay grade, if you will, to help bring them into the understanding of what we feel like needs to be accomplished for the goals for everyone involved. One of the things that's happened with me as the campus president is that I've learned there's different departments that report to me. So there's different managers of those departments. And those managers come to me with their experience because they're obviously in a manager's role, in a leadership role based upon their experience and their expertise in that department. And they're different. They're different from each other. They're different and they're having to work together. These departments are having to work together, but they approach things differently with their teams. And then as I get to know the teams, you start to see this personality, almost a personality of the department. And that we know is true is that, all things rise and fall on leadership, but we also take on the personality of the leader. And a lot of times they take on the personality or that type of method with that their leader displays to them. So through that, I learned you can never manage people the same. You can never lead the same. I have some of my leaders that are in one generation, some that are in another generation, some that have been through many generations, like myself. I've been around lots of generations. But with those generational opportunities, we will say, we learned that people grow up differently. They have different backgrounds, different cultures, and they respond differently. So I can't assume that I know where each person that comes in front of me, I can never make the assumption that I know exactly what they are anticipating from my conversation with them. So one of the main things I've learned as the campus president is just say I'm dealing with someone in admissions. They have a totally different task and mission, if you will, in the framework of our campus than someone who works in the library or someone who works in academics or financial aid or the bursar's office. So they have different missions and different tasks, and there's different skill sets that we use to put the right people in the right places for these departments. But they come with these skill sets that we're trying to do very similar skill sets for the people in those departments. But that brings different levels of emotional intelligence. That brings around different levels of responses. And so I mentioned response. I want to touch on that again. If someone is used to being called into the office or the campus president's office or whatever their supervisors is, and it's because they're in trouble. And I didn't call them in for that purpose, but they don't know that yet because they haven't learned that about me. The first thing I have to do is make the situation, the atmosphere of my office when they walk in to be comfortable, make it to be open so that I can learn who they are. And what I do, I have training. I am a lawyer and I was trained a lot on just watching, observing people. I worked a time at the state attorney's office, so it's all about watching people and watching reactions. But then getting into education leadership, working with different levels of faculty and the great minds that you're surrounded by, and working with students and I've learned a lot from students. You learn that you really have to sit back and wait and respond in accordance to how the atmosphere is building around you. For instance, if somebody comes in and they're expecting to be in some kind of trouble, they're on the defense already, they're nervous. And so my tone, my demeanor, my body language is going to dictate maybe how that meeting goes. And I can know that because I have to watch when that person walks in. If I'm watching from the second and get my full attention, I can't be in emails over here on the phone. I have got to engage from the moment that person walks into my office. Excuse me. And then when they walk into my office, I need to be able to read and understand emotional responses that they're putting off, or cues. And you can look at people's eyes, you can look at their face, you can look at their body language. You can certainly base it on their verbal responses. But you have to watch, do they want to stand? Do they want to sit? Are they, edging into your office? Are they coming in close? Is it aggressive? Is it passive? Is it fearful? So I want to have control as much as possible over the conversation that's going to happen. Now, I'm saying in this instance that I'm using, it's going to be a positive conversation, but they don't know that yet. But even if it were to be a negative conversation, not negative, but more constructive and maybe more performance management based, I still want to make sure the atmosphere in my office is calm and they feel accepted, they feel valued. So I can control that. So in order for me to control that, I've got to have my emotions in place. And so to have my emotions in place, I have to plan ahead to know that this person could come in with some preconceived ideas, could come in with some preconceived emotions, and it is up to me to be the calming factor and hear them out, make them feel valued and truly value what they have to say. But at the same time, we have to accomplish what the task is at hand. So it starts with, I have to understand this person. Now, like I said, if this person is from the admissions side of life, they're like this, go, 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 go. They're drivers. They get business done. It's move, move, move. They're very aware, and they're also very, very knowledgeable because they have to know so much products and understanding different people. Talk about dealing with different people all day long. That would be our admissions people. They're dealing with different personalities, parents, children, all day long. And so they're learned to flex in and out. But that could also weigh on a person's emotions because they could be a little bit drained because they've had to deal with so much that day. But when they come in, I need to understand that they do see things differently. Than if I call somebody from the library in, that person may be just more skeptical, why am I here? Do you need a book? I mean, what's going on? Is there a research issue? So again, it gets into the emotional intelligence of understanding how to decipher the emotions that are happening in front of us. You have to deal with people differently. And each person within a department, even though that department may have its own personality, each person within that department has their own personality, as we are well aware. Some of the things as campus president that I've had to do is I will know the situation because I'm the kind of person I want to know everything about a situation to problem solve. So say there's a conflict, I'm trying to resolve it. And say there's a conflict between two staff members. So I want to know as much as I can before I call them in here because I don't like to be caught off guard. But am I ever going to truly know everything there is to know between two different people? There's this person's view, and then there's this that happens to be the middle. So I can't take on the posture of, this is what we're going to do. I know your story. We're done. I have just shut them out of the equation, and you can't do that effectively. You can do it. It's not the most effective. So I need to understand when I meet with the one person, I would meet with them individually initially to find out the story, the side of the story. But if I happen to have personally a disagreement with how this person has responded, and I know that they haven't done exactly what they were supposed to do, and they had maybe a little bit of a show out, and they've got a little bit of an edge, a little bit of an attitude, I still want that person to feel valued and heard. So I can get them to a place where we can get that person to realize their part in the situation. And the way I do that is I, first of all, have got my opinion formed. And I probably have a preconceived idea of how it needs to end. And I could exercise my role as the campus president and say, listen, I know what happened. Doesn't matter what you say. I already know. I've got proof. I've got evidence. You don't ever do that again. There is going to be a verbal, then there's going to be a write-up. That probably isn't the most effective way. The most effective way would be to have that person sit there in front of me and say, okay, why don't you tell me what has happened? I want to hear from you. And I feel like even sometimes you got to be very careful with the words that you use, because if you say to a person, I want to hear your side of the story, that automatically draws a line. And I don't want that to happen. I want it to be just open communication. I've got to control my facial expressions. And that is a challenge for me because I am very, animated. And so I have to keep a neutral, presence. And then I want them to hear me, and I want them to be heard by me. What we do a lot of times is we will, while a person's talking and we're the listener, I have found that maybe we're not really listening. We're preparing and loading up for what we're going to say. And that can cause a problem. We need to actually hear what they're saying. They could say something different than what we're anticipating. And then if we miss that cue that they've just offered us, then it's going to cause a challenge. Now they may not trust me as the person that's going to help resolve. So I really need to hear what they're saying and hear how they're saying it, and watch the body language and watch the emotions, get them comfortable enough to tell me. And then I can obviously will manage different ways, but using emotional intelligence, I can ask questions such as, how would you handle this situation differently if you were given the opportunity? If you were in the role of me, how would you handle this? What do you think is an equitable resolution? And so, of course, we carry through those conversations. You're like, well, what does that have to do with emotional intelligence? Well, what it has to do with, that person is able to express themselves. And then I get their trust. They are listening to me. And then I'm able to say to them, why don't we walk through this together? And do you believe that perhaps if the person does say, well, I probably could have done this differently. So we want to hone in on that. We want to talk about, well, Stu, why did you react the way you did? Well, I got emotional. I got upset. And I've had a lot of people tell me that. Well, I just got upset for the moment. I just got upset and I walked out and I closed the door and I slammed the door and I just got emotional. But we have to confront that because we are a professional environment, but we do have people here a lot of hours of their days. So we want to make sure we're confronting and letting them know what is appropriate and inappropriate professional behavior in the workplace. I can't assume they know that. You would think everybody just knows there's this rule, this is how you act, and this is how you don't act. But how many times when kids are growing up, parents say to their kids, you're not acting right. What does that mean? I'm not acting right. So a lot of times adults get into the workplace and they wonder the same questions. I didn't know. I mean, can I express how I feel? I talk about my feelings. So we kind of have to help counsel through that. But before I can get a person to that point, I got to make sure I'm there. If I've had that morning that's been horrible and that it's been problem after problem after problem, I need to pull aside a few minutes before I meet with someone and make sure that I'm in the right headspace and in the right emotional, because I have to know me. And so that's some of the things that comes with emotional intelligence is first of all, you're going to perceive emotions, but you have to understand them. You have to perceive them accurately. And that starts with ourselves. So I have to know, what are my trigger points? Do I go, super excited, or do I tend to go negative? Do I go passive and just ignore it? It'll go away. Do I get almost aggressive or too stern? I have to look introspectively and know, what do I do in situations? And I have to force myself to do it. When I was in law school, I was in advocacy classes where we had to get up and practice in front of juries. And the juries would a lot of times be the local lawyers or their local judges. And sometimes it was the peers from our class, which happened to be the hardest group to get in front of because they know you. And it's just hard. But we had to get in front of them, and then they would record us. But then we would have to go back and watch. We have to be critiqued live by whoever the jury was, 6 to 12 people, and they would just go one by one and tell us. One time I remember the ladies, like, you did a great job on your opening statement. You were very thorough. I understood the story, but I missed so many details because your necklace distracted me. And I remember thinking, oh my Lord, I'm sorry, but they're just bringing out points to help us grow as people. But then I had to go back and watch the video of myself in that recording, and I had to critique myself on a report and send it back in. That's very hard. It's very humbling, and that's a good thing, because we want to believe we did our very best and that's good enough, but there's always ways to improve ourselves. And so a good practice is know your emotions and know a good day from a bad day about yourself, and know that today I probably need to be careful meeting with, maybe certain situations might push me a little. You have to deal with what's laid in front of you. You can't just walk away from it, especially as campus president. I mean, there's a fire, you're a firefighter. You have to do it. But you can be very careful and know going in that emotions have got to step aside for a second and just put logic into it. But those things come just like if you exercise or anything that you do, or if you're singing, you practice, you play an instrument, you practice. You've got to practice knowing who you are and your emotions. And you've got to know that there's certain points and certain phrases people use, or certain things that they do that just may, bend you a little bit sideways, but you've got to be very well aware. So you're perceiving your own emotions. You're perceiving your own facial expressions, your own body language. You know what your nonverbals are. You've got to be so keenly aware that you're not contributing to a situation that you're trying to lead and trying to manage. Then you've got to know how to perceive emotions from other people. You've got to understand they're not going to respond the way you want them to respond. They're going to respond within their personality. And you've got to be able to recognize that. It's very, very important. And, the nonverbal body language is a lot. And I'm not telling everybody to go through this class and learn how to do it. I have been through classes like that. But I'm just saying, sometimes if you're giving a person eye contact and they don't want to look back at you, there has to come a point where you may have to do the verbal confrontation, say, I see that you're not, engaging with me and looking at me when you're talking. And I think I can better understand if you could do that for me. Could you look at me and tell me? And I know, but you could just say, look at me. I am talking to you. But I feel if someone's not looking at you, there's a reason. And so you got to be delicate with it, and you got to get them to that place. Now, the ultimate goal is professionals. You need to know you give eye contact, but that person may not be at that point. So you can help grow them to that point. Then you got to know how to reason with the emotions. You've got to promote the thinking, the cognitive activity, and prioritize to pay attention. Prioritize to, when you walk by someone in the hallway, Some people walk by people and they don't speak. Is it because they're just being rude? They're just not talking to me. What's up? What's your problem today? But a lot of times that's not it. Maybe on the way to work, they almost got into a wreck, and then they got a text from a spouse over an issue and a bill's not paid. They're stressed out, and it's not even 8:01 yet. And they walk in the hallway by you and they don't speak. It probably has nothing to do with you. It's probably something that's gone on. Now, on the other side of that, as a campus president, when people don't speak to me when I pass them in the hallway, it's not a very big hallway, so you can see each other. I do tend to feel like, okay, is this avoidance for some reason? Are they having a bad day? But I do automatically, because I do believe in cues like that too. I believe if a staff or faculty member stops engaging with you, you might want to dig a little, because it could be an indicator that they're disgruntled. It could be an indicator that something's gone wrong and it's avoidance. So that is part of it, but you don't stop them right in the hallway and say, why are you avoiding me? Why aren't you looking at me? What's your problem? What you want to do is just say good morning and say their name. Good morning, John. Good morning, Mary. You want to be sure to engage. And first of all, you may do several things. You may snap them out of whatever fix they were in. And a lot of times, oh, I'm so sorry, man. I'm walking outside. I don't even see people. You could get that. Or it could be maybe you got a person who just feels like in their lives at that moment in time, no one sees me. No one knows who I am. I don't matter. And people get into those dark places. But you engaging and saying, good morning, John, could dispel that myth, which may lead them to a path of opening up more. But I use such a small example, but that is reasoning with some kind of unheard, unsaid emotions, because something causes that. I purposefully decide when I walk and pass any faculty member, staff member, student, I try to know the students' names as much as possible. It's hard to know all of them, but I try my best. But I always try to engage and speak to them. I think it matters. I think it's very important. It does value. People, they want to be heard. They want to be recognized and known. So I think that's very important. But then we respond emotionally to things that get our attention. So you want to be able to start that conversation. You want to understand the emotions. They have a lot of reasons. Why does one person they cry in the movie and the other person's laughing and the other person's just angry and the other person's just bored? And it's the same exact scene. How can that happen? Well, we don't know, because people are different and they express things differently. A lot of people use humor to cover up sadness. And a lot of people use anger because they don't like to confront, or they're defensive because they feel like a failure deep inside. There's all the psychological reasons that I am not equipped to talk about, but I can talk about on a leadership emotional level, is that if I understand that emotion, and I understand that emotions can cause a person to become dissatisfied with their work or cause them to be upset in that day, then I need to understand that maybe that person just needs a moment. I randomly will call different people from different departments in my office. I'll send them an IM through our messaging system, or I'll, walk down there and say, hey, come take a walk with me. Can we talk? And I hate to say this, but they freak out. Why does the campus president want to talk to me? But a lot of times just want to see how things are going. And I will learn things that I wouldn't have learned. And a lot of times I go to their place. I'll walk down to the computer lab or to the bookstore, to the admissions department, to financial aid, to the registrar's department, and just say, how's everything going in here today, ladies? And how's everything going, sir? What's happening? Because now I'm getting myself out of my normal atmosphere of their office and I'm getting into their workplace. And the emotional level is different, because if they've had a high charged atmosphere all morning long and in I walk, I maybe just have to bring a little humor to the situation, but I'm picking up on so many things, because that's what we do when we're emotional creatures. We do sense, we do pick up on responses. We do pick up on shutdowns or someone that just turns away and doesn't want to engage. It doesn't mean it's bad, but it does mean that maybe we need to give attention to it. So then you manage the emotions. Well, we need to manage our own emotions. That's the critical part, is managing ourselves. There was a situation I had, I would say about 2 months ago, where a person just did not communicate with me, refused to engage. I can only do so much when there's not two-way communication. But I knew this person was going through quite a bit. And this was a student, actually. And the student had met with me previously. And I knew the student had a lot on her plate. But it had risen to my level because she had challenges with the people that she was supposed to talk to initially. And it finally just rose to the level of the campus president. And we had really good conversations, and she turned her corner. She was doing well. A very rigorous program that she's in, high pressure, as a lot of it she put on herself, because they give you the guidelines to help you. But then she came into my office just upset. Nobody cares about me. This place is taking advantage of me. I try to do this. And then she just went on and unloaded. Now, inside of me, I want to say, you are so ungrateful. We have done nothing. I've opened my door for you so many times. We're offered to help you do this, and this is what we get. Obviously, I can't engage at the level. My feelings were saying that, but that's not the right answer. She's upset. I've got to sit there and manage me listening to her. Now, would I let her start swearing and cussing? And no, don't throw chairs. We don't do anything like that. I will keep control of my room, and my campus, because there is a protocol, but it wasn't to that level. It was just her emotions. And so I just let her get it out. And I said, so what's going on? I mean, what got you to this point? We were here and now we're here. What happened in the time span between the two? What happened? Tell me. You can talk to me. So what happened? And then she just was a flood of tears, and something really, tragic had happened in her family. And she didn't know what to do with it. She didn't know where to put it. She didn't know where to place it. And she began to place it. And then we were able to talk through that. And I was able to help guide her on, there's placement. We offer counseling for students. That's something they can have access to. And we were able to talk through options like that. And I was able to help her understand, if you were to do this in a workplace, you could lose your job. You could lose everything you've worked so hard for because you let your emotions rule a situation. So that was a good example. I would like to say every single one turns out that way. It doesn't. Sometimes the person their mind's made up. There isn't a lot to manage, as far as I can hear them out. I can show respect. I had a gentleman on the phone yesterday, upset, not at me. He's not even from this campus, and he hadn't even been at this university for 10 years. So he was just mad at the world. And I answered the phone. And so he went wild and crazy. And I said to him, sir, I do not mind listening to you, but you're going to have to keep it professional and polite. I thought it's not. It's crossed a line, and I need you to put this back in order. And I will gladly listen to you, but with the restraint of all of this that you're throwing, because it's unfounded. I know you're upset, but we've got to start from a place where we're going to be mutually respectful of one another. And he did, he did. And that's not what he wanted. He wanted an emotional response, but I had to be ready for that. And people sometimes do that because it works. People will come in emotionally charged and they will go off on somebody because it works. So you have to know that going in. I think that self-awareness, Harvard talks about emotional EQ, emotional intelligence. And they kind of talk about, it's a study that I read from them. 4 of the things that matter is self-awareness, self-regulation, social awareness, and social skills. And they equate that to, I think that is important. I think if someone is looking to improve, steps on what you can do to better understand it, I think you do some research. I think you read out there and understand what is emotional intelligence? What does it mean? How does it impact me? How does it impact others? But I think importantly is to understand yourself to begin with, and how do you respond to emotional situations? And how can you better respond? I critique my day at the end of the day, and I don't give myself high grades sometimes. Could I have handled that better? Is there a better way I could have sent that email? Emails don't really carry emotions, right? Hmm. I felt a lot of emotions from some emails that I've read and that I've sent. Yet they're flat words on a page. But wow, do they not instill some kind of response from us? So, yes, words are very, very powerful. Can they trigger some kind of any emotions in us? Yes. Can it trigger anger? Yes. Defensiveness? Yes. I remember one time I had a friend, he was honest, he would tell me the truth that I didn't want to hear. And I'm like, just tell me, what is the one thing that I need to work on the most? And he's like, you're just too defensive. And of course, my response, I'm defensive. So he won that case because, obviously. And so we don't want to admit that we have a shortcoming. We don't want to admit that there's something that controls us. And so we want to just be the calm, responsive person all the time. And so you have to have truth speakers in your life. You have to have people that are going to tell you. And it needs to be a colleague, not necessarily someone who's supervised, because then you're kind of opening the door to some challenges. But we do have to make sure that we have people speaking into our lives and telling us what we can work on. And then you begin to work on yourself. If you want to be better at emotional intelligence, begin to fix yourself and understand what triggers you, what emotions, and then how can you help somebody else? You'll start to recognize it. And then work on your people skills, your listening skills. How can I help somebody else? Don't be so quick to jump to a conclusion. Hear them out. Use the emotional intelligence to navigate the situation. It's a tool. It's a toolkit. And you don't want to manipulate people. You want to be able to navigate, and you want to be able to get them to the place where they make the change, where they see positive influence and they see themselves becoming better because they're applying principles. So in order for me to be able to do that, I've got to be able to do it with myself. I've got to be able to, when I read a hot email or when I read, or hear a scathing comment or something, I've got to be able to put that in the right place and not become a failure because those words impacted me that way. Maybe the person didn't intend for it to have the impact that it did. Maybe it was intended. Maybe that's just how they like to send their emails. And if that's the case, well, then how do I not personalize it? And how do I not get defensive? How do I take the feedback? How do I take what needs to be heard and not necessarily, how it felt, but what it said? And maybe the truth, pull the truth out of it. Now, could the person maybe have said it differently and done it differently? Yes, but I can only worry about what I do. So I have to make sure that I use that truth to try to make myself a better person. Then when I'm leading other people, they will learn to respect and trust me because they know it's built on truth. They know it's built on a calm atmosphere. I have fired people, and I don't love firing people, trust me. But in other careers, I have fired people that didn't lose self-value and respect during that conversation because we led to a point and they can still walk out of there with dignity. And the reason I use it for as an extreme example is just to say, you have your dignity. And yes, maybe they didn't perform the job and they weren't confident to continue to perform that job, but they don't have to be a horrible person at the end of that day. Now, are there sometimes situations where it's just like, I'm sorry, you've crossed that line and unfortunately we can't continue this relationship as employer employee? Yes, those are going to come. But again, keep the emotions at bay and learn how to control those and learn how to use the emotions to motivate people, to get them excited about being here. Let's look at the positive side of it. When you walk down there and walk down the halls and walk into departments and you bring joy, you bring laughter, you bring encouragement, then that lights the whole atmosphere. Then the whole reputation of the campus is lively. They want to support one another, and you show it and you're consistent with it. One of the greatest challenges in leadership is inconsistency. With emotional intelligence, keep it consistent. Don't be one person this day and another person that day, and people don't know what they're getting. Be consistent. Show emotional maturity and be able to resolve problems and work with people. And I believe once you do that, your leadership skills will improve. People are always going to help you improve your leadership skills because they're always going to have brand new challenges for you every single day. It is going to happen. I love this job and this role because there is never one day just like the other. There's never a dull moment. And that comes from the students, the faculty, the staff, the administration, just the university as a whole. But I grow as a person. I have grown so much, especially as a campus president, because it's all day long. And I'm learning, not to be overwhelmed. And I'm learning, if I am overwhelmed, just, don't show it. And just, I'm going to drive home, freak out, and turn the music up loud. So that's how I feel about emotional intelligence. I hope you've gotten a lot from it today. And there's a lot more to share. Do your research and start to use it as a tool that is highly effective.
Thank you for journeying with us today on Keiser Voices, the story of success. As we close this chapter, remember every story has its next page.